Please come up front. Paata Amonashvili. I feel special pride and joy to present you here today. Paata Amonashvili is a teacher, a Georgian colleague of ours, the president of the International Center of Humane Pedagogics. He created Basti Bubu project for kids in Tbilisi. He's a member of unbelievable family of Amonashvili, very hospitable. Myself, my family, our colleagues were guests of this family in the camp of the Amonashvili family, and it's a great joy and aspiration, the place where the whole life changes. And the most important indicator of what is happening is how kids react to it. And as parents, we can see those tremendous transformations. So I pass the floor to you, and please use this opportunity to ask questions. This is a beautiful opportunity to enjoy the depth of answers. So please ask questions orally or put them down in writing on pieces of paper. I will voice them out at the end. Thanks a lot for this introduction. I would also like to appreciate Natalia Tarchenko and all the organizers of this beautiful event. I flew in this morning to attend it, and I'm impressed with the school that hosts it today. I'm impressed with this conference. I met the speakers. Hopefully we'll become friends all through today. While now, I enjoy this opportunity to address you. As I recognize that most of you are parents, right? By raise of hands, who are parents? Well, both moms and dads, and probably teachers as well, right? A great company indeed. We have a full hour to talk, so please don't treat this discussion as my lecture. No, we're going to be sharing experiences and opinions, so it's going to be a joint way of finding the best ways of how to raise our kids, whether in the household or in the school. And I'm glad that today we have Stanislav Leonidovich Krupp here, who is the president of All Ukrainian Association of Humane Pedagogics, which is part and parcel of our International Center of Humane Pedagogics. This center was created by my father, Paata Amonashvili, whom you heard of, and he actually suggested to call it Humane Pedagogics. Who hears about this term for the first time ever? Okay then. Well, here's what I would suggest. First off, let me briefly define what does the humane pedagogic stand for and how it differs from other forms of pedagogics, how it could even be possible for pedagogics not to be humane. And then I would suggest to any one of you to come up here and to talk about raising our kids, how to make sure that we do it the best way possible. Whoever wants to be a co-speaker, get prepared now. Briefly about what the humane pedagogics is all about. Chalva proposed there are two different approaches towards raising kids. One is authoritarian. On the other hand, what Chalva suggested to call humane individual approach. What's the difference? The difference could be explained in weeks, but could be fit in one sentence. The difference is this: authoritarian approach finds ways of forcing a child what needs to be done by a child, and finds the external ways of forcing. In most of the cases, forcing is not something bad. Forcing to study, to do homework, to behave well, and for this, the authoritarian approach creates and invents and gets as heritage, inherits the experience of carrot and stick, something that for ages taught us how to give them gifts for doing something good and punish for doing something, bad. So it's an external way of supporting, external way of forcing, supporting way of punishing kids. And most vividly, it's expressed in grades. Grades and points that you get is the most vivid way of this external forcing. So kids come to school and it looks like they study just to get good grades. Obviously, they get the knowledge, and then we assess it in terms of a grade of points, and it's supposed to be motivating. They need to study well to get high grades, and if not, then that would be a great way for the parents through low grades to tell the parents that their kids under-deliver. So those grades, those points, is an external way of supporting or punishing kids. In all the countries, I observe the following surprising process, and I know it happens in Ukraine as well. I discuss it with colleagues multiple times. So it's August outdoors, and if you look at the kids who, when they turn 5, 6, 7, should go for the first time ever to school on September 1st, most of the kids strongly wish to go to school. They choose school bags and uniform and office supplies. They dream of going to school, right? That's what happened to your kids as well. But then, when you look at those kids in September and October, rarely enough, they continue to wish to go to school. I'm not talking about the exceptions. There are alternative schools that make the focus not on sharing knowledge, but first of all, making sure that kids want to go to school. But the majority of kids don't want to go to school anymore. So that's how teachers manage, in one snap of fingers, get rid of any desire for kids to dream to want to go to school. One of the reasons is because there is a search of some external forms of forcing, supporting, punishing a child, but kids are curious by nature. A beautiful example was just used at the panel discussion that I attended. If you give a child a bicycle, he would ride it the whole day long. But if you bring a child to a sports class, then from minute one they would not want to ride the bicycle. Humane pedagogics try to find not the external ways of punishment and forcing, but create such a miracle that a child would strongly want to study, to do what's needed to be done and behave well. We look for the ways how, by understanding the nature of a child, accurately feeling kids and seeing the world through kids' eyes, to understand what needs to be done so that they would strongly like to study, to develop themselves. Is it even possible? For some, it looks like something science fiction-like and unreal, but there are dozens and hundreds of thousands of teachers who either apply humane pedagogics approach or by not calling what they do still try to find ways to make kids want to study, they succeed. So what's the essence? That's the general definition of humane pedagogics. But it's just an internal state, actually. The treatment of the outside world that you emanate, and it covers both children, members of their families, friends. We are either on the wavelength of pushing somebody to do something or helping them to want to do something. We can do it in classrooms, we can do it in our households with our spouses, as well as in dealing with our friends. Either we are authoritarian and want to convince people to do what we believe is the right thing to do, or we find the ways for concurrence and agreement. These are two modes, and depending which one we switch in, that's what the pedagogics and the communication, how it would look like. But enough of theory, okay? Now let's discuss how, from the practical standpoint, it impacts the family lifestyle. And then by raise of hands, I will then choose somebody to come here and co-author this lecture with me. Well, finally, dads are willing. Do you want me to ask a dad? It's gonna be you and you. Two dads, actually. Let's welcome them here. What we're gonna be discussing with those two hero dads, I suggest do it in your notebooks, notepads yourselves, so that you can join this discussion with us. Can you briefly introduce yourselves? Can you use some other mic? Alexander, father of 3 kids. 5 years, 4 years and 3 months. Eldest girl and 2 other boys. My name is Igor. I have 2 kids. Elder, 14-year-old boy, and then an 11-year-old girl. Alexander and Igor. Well, dear friends, first of all, thank you for accepting this challenge to discuss and help others to find what would be the best ways of communicating with your kids. Here's what I would like to suggest. Let's discuss one secret of raising a child. Very simple if you put it in words, but indeed somehow it turns to be a very difficult secret to implement. So let's first discuss it, and then from the practical standpoint recognize whether it's possible to implement it. So raising a kid is all about images. Our images raise our kids, life images. How can we define an image? This is an example from life that such beautiful dads impress on their children. How we live, in other words, that's how our kids are raised. Not what we tell them what is right, but how we live our lives ourselves. One mom gave me a vivid picture of what is opposing to this. She wanted to raise one set of children, but she was just sitting, putting down the cigarette butt and in front of her 11-year-old girl, and she was telling her, if you start smoking, I'll kill you. So in her words were to to use an authoritarian order. If you start smoking, I'll kill you. But then the example of her life is to nervously put down the butt of the cigarette and then order, if you don't do if something, I'll kill you. Do we always find ourselves in such contradictory, opposing words and deeds? Let's try and figure it out together. To what extent we raise our kids through our images, and how could we, if possible, improve those images that help to raise our kids? For this, I suggest you go to this whiteboard, take markers. I'll join you here. Don't think that we'll be looking down at you. Actually, we have two whiteboards, so we can use both. So you use your notepads as if these are your whiteboards and your pens as if they are your markers. So open up a clean sheet of paper, because what we're going to be doing here now, I suggest each one of us would go through separately and then share, of course. In order to recognize how to better raise our kids, that first of all, probably we need to acknowledge a simple truth. If you walk from your home in the morning and don't know where you would go, you would arrive nowhere. So in order to know where we're going to, let us to clearly identify what is our educational goal in raising our children. This is not a simple task. So let's try to apply it to just one child. You can use your 3-month-old or any other. You also can choose any one of your two, an elder or younger, doesn't matter, and put their name in the middle. And dear friends, I suggest you do the same. You can use the name of your own boy or girl. Do you often say my child, by the way? Well, that would be a separate topic, to what extent they are our property. So, to select one child from your family, or teachers can select any pupil from their class, but just one. Nikita, 4 years of age. Alexander, who is, 14. Sasha, 14 years of age. Nikita, 4 years of age. Did you select a child on your notepad? If yes, fine. So, defining an educational goal in raising our kids. What does it mean? Alexander Nigar, I would ask you to imagine you, Sasha, and you imagine your boy Nikita in 30 years' time. Let's not go too far, so only in 30 years' time. You know, time flies so fast, especially recently. 30 years back, or a bit more, my teachers raised me in school to know how to live in a communist society. They, for some reason, believed that if it's not going to be a communist society yet, it's going to be a strongly developed socialist society, and that's what I was raised to live through. Years later, I find myself in a different society, so what they were raising me for. But raising Sasha and Nikita is for long-term perspective. We raise him not to eat porridge today, but to become a true person with capital P, a respected citizen of Kiev, Ukraine, the whole world, the whole universe. We are raising our kids not to do the homework tonight, but to live prosperous lives in the future. So, let's take this image 30 years from now, that it would be 2049. Can you imagine how beautiful Kiev would look like in 30 years' time? So our Sasha and our Nikita are walking along the streets of this beautiful city, and we imagine what they would look like. Did you do this before? Imagining him in 30 years' time. I always looked at him through those eyes. No, I didn't do this before. I could not possibly imagine you were raised for communist society. At this point of time, I cannot even imagine what a society would look like. It's an ever-changing environment, but we should do that. Unless we do it, what we're raising him to become. And the question is not what I raise him for, what I orient him towards to. Well, how could you set those milestones unless you imagine the future? Without our imagination, raising of child would fail. As soon as we have a child in front of us, we talk to him based on what? Based on our thoughts about the future. Give me a sec. I'm not telling you to imagine what a society would look like in 30 years' time. We will fail here, for sure. It's not about this. Totally. Anything might happen in the society by that time.
We hope that we will have the best society ever. Everything is going to be just perfect. But this Sasha's gonna live, and you don't know what kind of future he's gonna have, but you're raising him now without imagining him in the future. How are you going to educate and raise this child? And you really don't have to know what kind of technologies and robots will be flying around, what kind of cell phones will be carried by the people. Maybe they'll be just chasing us instead of us carrying them. So we are not doing that. What we are going to do is to imagine Sasha as a person. And there are some qualities, personal qualities, that were always valued. As we know from history, they are valued now, and I think that they, with high probability, will be valued 30 or 300 years later. So let's not imagine the society that there will be in the future, but Sasha happy in any kind of society, regardless of anything. Do you agree with this kind of approach? For this purpose, this is what we are going to do. We will establish 3 basic qualities of Sasha and his personality, which he, in your mind, will be used by him, or he will have in 30 years. We can mention 4, 5, and 6, but 3 is enough so far. What Nikita has right now? He's got something, right? But this morning he refused to eat breakfast. Is he okay with going to preschool? Yeah, he wants to go to preschool. Sometimes he's crying, sometimes he doesn't want to do things, but they're still small today. So maybe they don't have those qualities, maybe they're very rudimental, maybe there is something of the opposite nature. So we are not writing down what they have now, but we use our imagination. And we are thinking about those best qualities which we'd like to see in them in the future. And we are talking about personal qualities. I'm not talking about being a good tennis player or swimmer. I'm talking about personal qualities. For instance, give me an example, please. Curiosity, right. Kindness. What other qualities we can use? Integrity, self-confidence, determination, responsibility. All those are personal qualities. But when you spell out these qualities, I suggest to choose something which is the most important, something that is the key. That would be number one. Then, accordingly, number two is going to be something that ranks second, and then something that ranks third. And this is how you build the image of your child in the future. Okay, quality number one. Determination. Leadership. Curiosity. Well, you mentioned these qualities, and now our imagination is going to suffer unless we specify with details. What do you mean? Determination. And what do you mean when you say leadership? Just be specific. What exactly do you mean when you say this? And what have you mentioned? Curiosity. What that means for you as well. While Igor is thinking, please let me know what do you mean when you say determination. In my case, this is when your child is aimed at your childhood aims and your education aims at attaining a result. So this is a process that aims at a certain result, right? And then this process which aims at attaining a result pursues ambitious objectives, some complex objectives. May I add, with just my assumptions, and you keep thinking. So in 2049, Nikita is going to be absolutely determined, and he is a very good leader. And he is a leader of a crime group. He has an ambitious plan to rob a bank which is impossible to rob completely. This is very, very important objective, and he is determined. And he knows that he ain't gonna lead this bank without a bag of money. And he is leading everybody else like he is a super great leader. People follow him, and he's now standing in front of this bank. So, do you like this picture of the future? This is your projection. Correct, but this is my assumption, which is based on this. You never specified. Determination is a process, right, as you said. But what's key in this process? Being determined or having the right objective? What kind of objective are we talking about? Because objectives can be different. Rob a bank, that's one of the objectives. It's not good from my standpoint, and I'm convinced from your standpoint as well. What do you think about this? I agree, not the best. It's actually the worst objective. But there are other objectives as well. Make money by honest work. Instead of stealing a bag of money from the bank, you become a top manager and you will get paid the same amount. And this isn't a good objective. It could be a different objective, something not tangible, not material. There is a story. A grandson comes to grandpa and says, "Grandpa graduated this college cum laude. What's next? I'm gonna get a great job with all my credentials. I will become a bank associate. I'm gonna make a lot of money, and then I will become a top manager. I'll have my own business. I'm gonna have a nice corner office in a good building. Then I will get married. I'll have kids and homes and summer homes and helicopters and cars, and then kids grow up, and then I retire, and then I take my wife and we travel across the world, and then this grandson gets offended, and then I'm gonna die," he says. And then this grandpa says, "So do you need this cum laude diploma to be put 3 feet under?" So really, this determination is not really about the objective. You probably need to think more. What kind of determination are you talking about? What kind of leadership are you talking? Do you understand what I'm kind of asking of you? You are taking things out of the context. You said, put here 3 qualities. Qualities, they are linked. They supplement each other. There will be other qualities as well. This is how I see my son. So he's growing in the family. This is me. This is my wife. My wife has different view on qualities, but all this, well, you became irritated. No, I haven't. No. Well, I'm not saying that you will have to change. No matter what you mention here, I agree with everything you say. Because this is your child, this is your education, this is your educational objective. I will modestly present some of my opinions based on my experience, based on the experience of talking to numerous parents who are trying to find best ways of educating their kids. So I agree with determination and leadership and curiosity. I concur 100%, but I'm asking you to please be more specific. What do you mean when you say determination? You have to be specific here, because we'll move on to number 2 and number 3. Right now, this is the key objective. And if determination is the key objective, the objective is the most important, and then determination. So the word itself means something. It's asking for an objective. So this is no longer a quality of the person. The quality of the person would be choosing the right objective. A noble person will choose a certain objective. A bad person will choose a different objective. The objectives will be different, but the determination to attain them will remain. The whole concept of determination doesn't have any bad or good connotation, plus or minus. You can be determined in both cases. Hence, I'm asking to please specify. The speaker is not using the mic, unfortunately. Cannot hear. That's exactly what I'm saying. As per our system of values. But now, what kind of system of values are we talking about? Let's start with the next. Now, please give me a definition of your curiosity. It's very hard to give specific definition. Well, if we fail to define specifically, my dear Igor, then our education is not specific, but it has to be specific. If we fail to define a specific objective and we have something general, then how do you develop specific course of training? When kids are born, Sasha was born, and for 14 years he was raised 24/7, 365 days a year. For 14 years he is being raised. So he is raised in those cases where you do this intentionally, where you are not there to do this, when there are teachers doing this, when they think they are not doing it, but they are still doing it. He was raised and educated also at home when you're talking to your wife about him, and he kept hearing what you were talking about. He was also even educated even more in this case when you talk to him directly. So education and raising a child doesn't stop. If you're not specific regarding what exactly would you like to raise, in your child, there are so many questions. Curiosity to what? Curiosity to which specific phenomena? Why curiosity? So be specific. I think that we are not going to something specific, in my understanding. I'm giving a child a certain system of benchmarks or landmarks. I'm saying, well, the rocks are there, dangerous. The sea is over there. It's also dangerous. So you choose where to go. The system of values. Please specify. What kind of system of values are you talking about? Because a system pretty much presupposes a hierarchy, right? A structure. So what's in the system of values? What ranks one in terms of Nikita and him 30 years later? The system of values that is shared with his parents. Well, the parents are giving him their own system of values. Please be more specific. So, being humane. This means that when you're not just guided by your own wishes, but this when you have the understanding there are other people around you, and the wishes of those other people have to be taken into consideration, and together you move towards something good. Be able to love somebody. Compassion, support. The speaker is not using the mic. Please, somebody ask the speaker to use the mic, because translation is not possible without the mic. So somebody needs to give the mic to the speaker. Thank you. So we are talking about two kinds of love. One kind of love means the love that we have with us all the time, the love that we live through. It could be anything. For love, we need to have certain conditions. Speaking of a child, it's manifested like this. He is showing good behavior, we love him. If he brings an F after school, there is no more love. From the standpoint of the wife, this is how it's manifested. The husband comes home from work at 7, like he said, we love him. But imagine this, you serve a very, very good dinner. This is a good example from Marina Targakova. You have the candle, and he promised to come at 7 p.m., so it's 8, it's 9, he's not there, he's not responding to this phone call. At 11 p.m., he opens the door, and he's like, tipsy. So, are you gonna love him at this moment? So, what kind of conditions at this moment stop you from loving him? Or when your wife put too much salt in the food, or did something wrong. So we have this conditional love, and then you see whether this object of your love matches all those conditions. If the conditions are not met, then the love somehow goes away, and instead you have this bad feeling which is called irritation. the definition of love, and if you want to do this later, you can look at the Hymn to Love by the Apostle Paul. It's a very good definition of true love, unconditional love. It's about when you don't get irritated no matter what. This is when you don't think of anything evil, because if you find irritation, there is no love. There is love, but only conditional love. And then there is another form of love, which is a foundation for any humane pedagogy. It's this different kind of love is called unconditional love, where you don't need any conditions to love. The child is showing good behavior or not showing good behavior, you still love that child. If he hit his grandma in the head, you shouldn't be loving him and asking him to do it again. Well, if you disagree, if you don't want him to do this, but you still love him, what do you do? What would you do in this case? I cannot give you an answer, because now we are just talking about responses. You try to find a simple solution, and usually this is a quick and dirty solution. I'm gonna tell you a story regarding reaction. So this mom goes to a shopping mall and she takes an 11-year-old Grisha with her. So she goes to the shopping mall, and in her head she's thinking about sales and food and what to buy, not to buy, and she's all excited and she's just looking forward. You had that kind of feeling, didn't you? So you have this expectation. Then Grisha throws mom off by asking a question. Mom, what time is it now? Mom is irritated a little bit, right? She is upset. She looks at Grisha and says, your dad gave you a cell phone. Look at your cell phone and it'll tell you the time. I left the cell phone in the bag with my pocket money and the keys to my house. So suddenly mom becomes highly irritated. She becomes red in the face. So what exactly was in your head when you did this? I told you we are going shopping and you left the cell phone. How am I going to find you if you get lost? But you get lost all the time. So when you get lost, I fail to find you. How are you going to go back home? You don't have the money for the bus. And if you stupid find the money, you will not be able to get into the house because you don't have the keys. So do you understand your mistake? So Grisha looks at her sadly. And now he says, I guess I shouldn't have asked you what time was at that time. So this is a spontaneous response from mom. It's natural. And this response is present around us every time. So now we put everything on pause and we will ask moms and as psychologists, what have you tried to do with Grisha? What kind of education you gave him? What kind of quality out of these qualities you wanted to give him? Because you were imagining some qualities. So this, you're not pausing education. You're not pausing the process of raising a child. You cannot say, well, I don't have time to raise you right now. Just sit quiet. I'll have time and I'll be back and I'll continue. So these words are also raising in education. So mom will probably tell me, I wanted him to predict things, to have a foresight, to think ahead. What are you doing over there? Well, education doesn't stop. See? He changes things on the fly. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, French philosopher, used to say that the best education is the education where you don't have a feeling like somebody is teaching you. It was something which he used to call natural. So mom wants to educate, to train someone to think ahead, But did she really train him to think ahead? From the standpoint of psychology, you just showed irritation for nothing, without any good reason, how to offend somebody or insult somebody, how to ridicule somebody, how to use some swear words against somebody you love. So if mom would make a list here on this board, do you think she will mention that I want my Grisha to be a highly irritated person who is irritated at the right time and in the right place, and who is determined in his irritation? For nothing. Right. So I guess she will say, no, I don't want to see that. But in fact, she is raising him exactly like this. Our spontaneous responses, which are based on conditional love, will always bring irritation in any case, because when we talk about the situation with grandma, if this child misbehaved and our love disappears at this very specific moment, then this humane pedagogy did not occur. Now you have only authoritarian approach. You are going to make remarks and criticism, and you will be comparing him to your neighbor who is not hitting his grandma in the head. Do not compare your child to other children. This is the worst insult that you can ever make. There is a joke. The son of mama's friend. That's the best child ever. Stanislav, make a note. We're going to use it in our community. So, speaking about grandma, if love stays, if it doesn't go anywhere, can you hug this child? Can you just imagine this, Sasha, and start talking, not about him hitting grandma in the head, but you should tell him, these are the phrases that could show our internal unconditional love. Dear Sasha, I love you so much. I will always love you no matter what. This love will not change, but right now you made me unhappy. What just happened should not be happening again. Grandma deserves love, care, and attention. You should not be hitting her in the head with encyclopedia. So then this conversation will mean that I am adding new images of care about grandma. So this child will see that everybody respects grandma, and those images have to be lively or based on reality. And any kind of child in school, in the families, he will be using all his ears when you start by saying, you know how much I love you. That's it, it's his all ears. But if you're gonna say, what exactly have you done? And suddenly he shuts down. Both of his ears shut down. So humane is very good. Very good definition. So what now you have as number one? Health. You are going to be surprised. You need a definition to that. Dear friends, I love working with you here, and I can stay with you for days. I'm gonna mention health, just, in a couple of words. Health is so vague from the standpoint of doctors, and I spoke to them for days and days, and they have no clue what health is. This is what they tell me. He's healthy unless he comes to my office complaining that something aches. Now I ask them, can they suffer this pain and keep living their life? Yes, they are healthy because they haven't come to my office and complained. I guess I should rephrase this term health, and I should call it in this way. Ability to keep your body fit and healthy. So it's not that God gave you health or took it away. It's the ability and the determination to maintain what God gave you properly. And this is a skill. This is what you develop since you are 4 months old, or you can start doing this when you're 14, I guess. But this is a skill. Let's move on. Now, what do we do next? Did you mention those qualities as well, or I guess we're intervening with your process? The speaker is not using the mic. So what's your name? My name is Taras. I heard this topic, devaluation, when your money worth trash. So when you keep saying love, love, love every morning, but you're not showing any action to prove it, then you devaluate this very quickly. Image-based education means that you don't even have to say love every time, but you show in your every action that you love him. Why are you talking about Pepsi? Why? The gift.
A present or a gift of a bottle of Pepsi Cola is not an expression of love. This is a sugary beverage that harms your health. Patting the head or embracing a person, well, that's an external act. We can be internally pissed and angry, but we can embrace and pat the head. It's not love. Most importantly, you need to feel the state of absolute, unconditional love to a kid. Oh, that's a beautiful question indeed. But next time, otherwise we'll run out of time. And you can open the state inside of you. There are ways to do that. Don't suppress anything. We'll evolve it somehow else. Albert Einstein once told his lecturer who claimed that there is no God, and he wanted to prove from the standpoint of physics that he's true. And then Albert Einstein said that there is no darkness. From the physics standpoint, this is something that could not be properly acknowledged. We can easily evaluate light, but darkness comes only when we recognize light. And light is the faith in God. That's why the scripture says, love your enemy. And you ask me, could we tell this to our child? Agree. No, but that's where there is no space left for being pissed. If you're lacking it now, then you should have some strong will. If Sasha will not be raised with the images of curiosity, then, being grown up, he will have to use his force of will to develop this curiosity. Yeah, you can do that, but let's discuss it offline. Because when we talk about Rustaveli, and this is a good example, it will take us a week just to discuss that topic. In terms of personal traits, when we make the first step, it's important to identify the first trait, and then when we start recognizing what's going on, then you can add some more. Let's finalize this exercise. We raise our kid with images. What I would ask you to do now. Put some boxes down. On a scale 1 to 10, evaluate yourself on all those traits. Whether you can keep yourself fit and health on the scale from 1 to 10. 10 points. That means this trait is that you would live for thousands of years healthy. 1 means you virtually have no such trait at all. And you evaluate yourself on a scale 1 to 10 on curiosity. Being humane. Why are you so nervous? Now, put it for your wife. Now you should be nervous. Start with the bottom one, staying fit and healthy. Is she around in this hall? He's an honest guy. Look. Of course, we trust those points. Hopefully, we'll continue next time. You need to justify those points. Next step is how our kids see those images. So you now do it up to 7, but you can do it before the kid grows up, wakes up, and after he goes to sleep. In the middle, you'll drink Pepsi Cola, so he won't see those 7, he will see only the remaining 3. So the next topic we're going to be discussing next, to what extent the kid can see the demonstration of the traits that you have. So once again, you put down the answers, and if, let's assume, your kid gets no other images from others, even though he will, then curiosity or being humane, 6 and 9, average will be 7.5. He can see 7, so approximately he will get what, 5? About 5. Is it okay that Sasha in 30 years' time will be only 5 points out of 10 in being humane, and hopefully he would have more. Well, that's your path, dear Igor. As this say, stop raising kids, they will copy you. Well, why do you then attend such workshops? Alexander, we just had a small talk. Was it useful for you? What would you take the most interesting out of this conversation? On the one hand, nothing new in theory, that's well known, but from the practical standpoint, you helped to set the priorities straight. And it's easier for us to support and strengthen our strengths. But weaknesses, we always do decide, let's do it later. I can see that my priority one, even through images, my kids could hardly assess this priority as high as myself. Even though in dealing with him, I want to focus the attention on being dedicated and committed, and I hope that that's what we need to develop in him. I'm more coming from the authoritarian system. You call it, she is from democratic educational system. You call it humane, right? She's closer to being humane. I'm closer to the opposite. So probably we complete each other, sometimes argue, but I know the focus that we'll see. Thank you. Thank you. Simple rule is this. If you want to see love in your kid, to have absolute unconditional love as you described it, don't explain to them how to love, but demonstrate how we love, and not loving the child, but the grandmother. Do you love your mother-in-law? Yes. With unconditional love? Yes, with unconditional love. Let's thank Igor and Alexander, friends. Thank you. Good luck, happiness, and lots of love. Two more minutes. Stanislav, can you please come closer so that everyone will see how pretty you are? Humane pedagogics is being strongly developed in Ukraine, which makes us so glad. And so Stanislav is the person to raise it with. Esteemed colleagues, because all of you are teachers and parents, right? Today we've seen a beautiful lesson of how to raise a child, that a child is being raised using images. Even though Paata failed to mention that the best image for us, to Christians, is the image of Christ. He actually was the founder of the traits that we all strive to achieve, that of the unconditional love and images of such unconditional love. I would like to add that raising a child talks about sustaining a spiritual axis. That is to say, in spiritual images, we raise our kids. In Ukrainian, we call it by the word which allows to open up the secret component that is invested into a child, and it has to be developed. And through that, we allow the creators will be actually demonstrated in a child. Also, how we treat a child. We treat kids as a property, my child. But if we imagine that each child comes from the Creator and is giving to us only to raise the child, to develop the potential that the Creator invested into him, well, that's all I wanted to add here, and to thank Paati and all of you that you found this opportunity to listen to a wise person. Thank you, Stanislav. This is the address of the website, amonashvili.org. You can check our programs here, summer program. We still have a couple of places left in our September retreat. So if you want to visit Georgia, find information about it, and the books that we want to present to three fathers. For you, for a beautiful question. And to Igor and Alexander. Can I pass it to Alexander, please? Thanks a lot. Have a nice day.